Why, hello there, I'm Professor Joel, and welcome to another episode of Planet Scooby Reviews. Today we are covering episode 1 of season 3 of Scooby-Doo Where Are You, and it is called Watch Out, the Willawaw. And this episode originally aired on September 9th, 1978. And I know this is technically the Scooby-Doo show, but for the past 20 years it's been packaged on DVD and Blu-ray as season 3 of Scooby-Doo Where Are You. And in the Scooby-Doo show era, we see the gang traveling outside of California where they are headquartered. So they're going around all over the world in these episodes, and this episode is no exception. In this episode, they are probably in Michigan. They're near a Chippewa reserve, near the U.S.-Canadian border, and there is one or a few Chippewa reserves in Michigan. There are other reserves in America and in Canada for the Chippewa, but since this is close to the U.S.-Canadian border, we're assuming Michigan. And the gang are up there to visit Velma's Uncle Dave. This isn't the same uncle we saw in the Curse of Viking Lake. That uncle was up in Canada, and that uncle's name was Uncle John. Uncle Dave works for the Border Patrol for the U.S.-Canadian border. And when they get up there to meet him, Uncle Dave is missing, and they find his cabin ransacked. And while searching for Velma's uncle out in the woods, they see this monstrous flying like owl in the sky, and that is called the Willawaw. And if the Willawaw says your name, you're next. You're his next victim. He's going to swoop down and carry you away. We also get a couple of owl-like henchmen who cause further havoc for the gang. I don't have much trivia about Watch Out, the Willawaw, other than that there's a character named Red Heron, which is a play on red herring, and usually a red herring is a fake out in an episode where you suspect someone is the villain, but at the end, that person is not the villain. And we saw this later on in a pup named Scooby-Doo, where there was a character named Red Herring that Freddy was always blaming, and that was a lot of comedy later on in those episodes, a decade or so away from this one. But is the Red Heron in this episode a bad guy or not? Is it all a ruse? Let's find out. The episode begins with the gang on a rickety wooden motorboat during a bad storm. Velma is worried about her Uncle Dave, who promised earlier to meet them at the village, so something must be wrong if he stood them up. The gang reach the Indian Bay Picture Rocks, which marks the area close by to Uncle Dave's lodge. Before they reach the spot, however, a giant owl swoops down at them, scaring the entire gang.
We've got to find Uncle Dave.
At Uncle Dave's lodge, the door is unlocked, so the gang see themselves in and find it ransacked. His dinner is even left on the table, meaning he was nabbed pretty fast. Scooby is the first to run into some owl creatures, which aren't the Willawaw, but more like some giant birdmen. This gets Freddy curious, so they go outside and look where Scooby finds some owl feathers. They also bump into Red Heron, who is a friend of Uncle Dave. Red Heron explains that Gray Fox, who is another member of the Native American tribe, heard the Willawaw call Uncle Dave's name. And when the Willawaw calls your name, he's bound to swoop down from the sky and carry you away. Gray Fox, by the way, is voiced by future Scrappy voice actor Lenny Weinrib. Shaggy explains they've already seen the Willawaw, and Red Heron tells them to go, as that means one of them will be the next victim.
We're looking for my uncle, Dave Walton, the border guard.
I am Red Heron, Sachem of the Chippewa. We come because Gray Fox heard the owl call your uncle's name.
When owl calls your name, Willawaw swoops out of skies to carry you away.
A fiery flying monster, face like owl. You saw the Willawaw, and one of you will be his next victim. Go, before Willawaw come back.
We're not going until we solve this mystery and find my Uncle Dave.
Velma refuses to leave until they find Uncle Dave. As it's late, Freddy and the girls stay in the lodge for the night, and Scooby and Shaggy are told to go out and guard the boat. As Scooby and Shaggy make their way to the boat, the Willawaw swoops down and gives them a scare. After hiding, however, they soon realize that it was just a regular owl who swooped down. Unfortunately, though, this owl calls out Scooby's name, terrifying our cowardly duo once more. In the motorboat, they soon see the real Willawaw, and Scooby fires up the motorboat by accident. The boat launches across the bay as the Willawaw chases Scooby and Shaggy until they eventually end up in a cave at the Picture Rocks.
Jeepers! The Willawaw is after Shaggy and Scooby!
In the cave, they both find footprints and wheel tracks, but are soon chased off by the call of the Willawaw. Daphne, Velma, and Freddy saw Scooby and Shaggy get chased away, so they set off to find our duo. On the ground, they find an Indian pictograph scratched in. Velma deciphers the pictograph, which is danger, and assumes Uncle Dave wrote it to ward off anyone searching for him.
Shag and Scooby disappeared right around here. Something scratched in the dirt.
A heart and 2 crossed arrows.
It's an Indian pictograph.
A pictograph?
Indian picture writing. When I was a little girl, Uncle Dave taught it to me. This is the sign for danger.
They also confront the Owlmen, which are 2 owl-like humanoids. The Owlmen chase them into a cave, and Freddy, Velma, and Daphne hide in a room which is full of cans of kerosene and sandbags.
They must be what Scooby saw back at the lodge.
And they're after us!
We then cut back to Scooby and Shaggy, who come to a locked door. Scooby picks the lock with his tail, where they find racks of ladies' fur coats and other luxury items like giant colored television sets, paintings, stereo equipment, and silver statues.
Paintings, hi-fis, silver statues, giant owls like we're goners.
They also find 2 giant owls. Back to Freddy and the girls, Freddy has set a trap which catches the 2 owlmen. Instead of 2 villainous henchmen, we discover it's Scooby and Shaggy in owl costumes. Shaggy tells them about the treasure room, and Velma explains that this mystery is making a lot more sense. Freddy creates a new plan, and we cut to several scenes of Red Heron tracking down the gang. Freddy's plan nearly fails as Shaggy and Scooby gets chased once more by the Willawaw. But eventually the fiery flying creature is caught. We soon discover it's just a helium balloon with an owl costume thrown on top of it.
It's all right.
Scooby also lands on Gray Fox, the mastermind of an international smuggling ring.
The mastermind of an international smuggling ring.
The sandbags and kerosene were used for the jet-powered helium balloon. The Willawaw's terrible shriek was made by the jet engine, and the Willawaw legend was just to scare everyone off. Velma further explains that Gray Fox was smuggling the treasures into Canada. Uncle Dave shows up after Red Heron finds him.
This jet-powered helium balloon.
And like the jet engine made that Willawaw's terrible shriek.
Gray Fox took advantage of the old Willawaw legend to scare people off from his smuggling operation into Canada.
Gray Fox had figured out that Uncle Dave knew what was going on and sent the Owlmen after him to capture him. Red Heron explains that Gray Fox will be punished according to his tribe.
Willawaw will never fly again. Council of Elders will punish those who bring shame on tribe.
With another mystery solved, the gang head off to Uncle Dave's cabin for a big feast. I give this episode a 7.5 out of 10. I thought there were a lot of cool moments in this episode, but I also felt this episode had a little too much in the way of filler. There's just a lot of scenes where it's just Scooby and Shaggy being clumsy and cute and getting into trouble and acting cowardly, and I enjoy all that, of course, but I just wish there's a little more time spent kind of working on the Native American lore and perhaps maybe showing their village or something, or maybe having them talk to more Native American Indians and such. I think that would have been maybe a little better spent, and just maybe building up the spookiness of the episode. They do touch upon some things and they do make it a little spooky, and Velma finds that Indian pictograph, which is cool, but otherwise, you know, they have a character named Red Heron, but they don't really focus on him that much. They just kind of cut him in later on, tracking the gang, so you kind of think he might be the bad guy, but that was really about it, and I just wish they spend a little more time on that. I love spooky, and this episode just wasn't spooky, so I just wish they spent a little more time adding mystery and spookiness to the plot. The owl men, they look a little silly. Not the Willawaw, but the owl men. They just kind of look like high school mascots for a sports team. And I know it's a kid's cartoon and whatnot, but it just looks silly to me. The Willawaw itself, while I applaud the writers trying to do something different, and I think they invented the Willawaw. I don't think this is actually part of Native American history. It just looked a little too cartoony for me. And I like how it was on rocket gas or whatever, to rocket fuel to like drive it around. That was kind of cool, and it screeched. But I wish it was probably like, I think I would have liked it more if it was an eagle. I think an eagle would have been a lot cooler, but of course they couldn't have an eagle saying Scooby's name, which added to the fun of the episode. But I don't know if you've ever seen the Judas Priest cover. They have that mechanical eagle on it. But of course, I think they did the eagle too in that the Ghost Who Sacked the Quarterback. So maybe that's why they didn't do an eagle. But owl creatures, they look a little too cute. And the owl in this kind of reminded me of She-Ra's owl, her owl sidekick. Because I know the owl in this has like a trail, like how a comet has like a tail. This Willawaw had like a trail of rocket gas fuel or whatever that looked like fire, but to me it looked like glitter, so it kind of reminded me of She-Ra's owl, which is more on me because She-Ra came out like 5 years after this, but it just looked a little too cute for me and I didn't find it that scary. Most of this episode takes place at night in a cave, and that's cool. And the nighttime scenes though on the Blu-ray look kind of garbagey. There's a lot of artifacts going on, and they didn't clean it up very well on Blu-ray. And when you put things to Blu-ray, things get sharpened. So there's like a lot of white blobs in the sky that look awful. And maybe they were originally intended to be stars, but they just look like artifacts, and they blink on and off kind of too slow, and they're really distracting. That doesn't take away from my score. It's just something to watch out for if you buy the Blu-ray set. Most of the other episodes don't take place at night like this. Or they do take place at night, but they might be in a forest or whatever, so you don't see like a lot of the stars. I know Creepy Tangle in Bermuda Triangle has a lot of garbage kind of night scenes too. But otherwise, the Blu-ray set does look kind of good. Anyway, that is my review, 7.5. Thank you for any likes, views, and subscribes. Next week, we will be covering Creepy Tangle in Bermuda Triangle. And that'll be a nice change of pace once again. They're traveling around the world. They're in Bermuda. And until then, stay spooky.
Jeepers! What was that? Jeepers! The Willawaw is after Shaggy and Scooby.
They must be what Scooby saw back at the lodge.
And they're after us!
Now go!